We are live at this hour to Alaska, United States, where President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and also U.S. President Donald Trump are expected to meet today to hold a bilateral meeting along with other members of a delegation from both countries to address the conflict in Ukraine. This is the moment in which the delegation from Russia is arriving at this hour to Alaska to hold this meeting. We are awaiting for the descent of President Putin at this hour. President Donald Trump is already on this territory in which it is expected this meeting to take place, and it is expected as well to focus on seeking a resolution to the Ukraine conflict as well as broader Russia-U.S. bilateral relations as well. This meeting is going to take place in the state of Alaska, which is the edge of which lies just a few dozen miles across the Bering Strait from the Russian border. It is the closest state from between United States and Russia. The meeting is set to begin in a few hours from now, and it is set to take place at the Joint Base Elmendorf, Richardson in Anchorage. Kremlin Foreign Policy aide Yuri Ushakov announced earlier on Thursday about this meeting that was very much expected throughout this week. A number also of pilots, servicemen, also civilians are expected also to are buried precisely in this military base of the U.S. and it is a very symbolic place to this meeting to take place. It is also going to be a face-to-face meeting. The summit will open with one-to-one meeting, and also it is going to have a conversation between President Putin and Trump, both accompanied by their interpreters, according to the Kremlin spokesperson. The talks will then continue between the Russian and the U.S. delegation, and the Kremlin and the White House initially confirmed that both leaders are expected to speak at a joint press conference following the negotiations. Also, President Trump later told to Fox News radio that there was no chance that this meeting was going to take another turn and have negative impact, negative consequences. So Moscow's team also will include Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, Defense Minister Andrei Belosov, Finance Minister Anton Silvanov, and Special Presidential Representative for Investment and Economic Cooperation with Foreign Countries Kirill Dmitriev, as well as Ushakov himself, the Kremlin spokesperson. At this moment, the presidential airplane from the Russian delegation is arriving at this moment at Alaska, the U.S. state in which this meeting is going to be taking place. It is a meeting very much expected that could have a positive outcome for the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And also Russia noted that there will be also officials as part of the U.S. delegation, but at this moment it is expected, it remains to be seen how many members of the U.S. delegation are going to be taking part in this bilateral meeting. The central issue of this summit, according to Russia Today news media, the topic of this summit is expected to be the Ukraine conflict, also trade and economic issues, and other bilateral cooperation meetings and issues and topics. And also, according to President Putin, that offered statements on Thursday to national news media, he said during a meeting with members of the Russian delegation that Trump's administration was making quite energetic and sincere efforts to end the crisis and create a long-term conditions for peace between our countries to be set. And also the Kremlin indicated that no documents are expected to be signed as a result of this meeting. Also, Trump has described this summit as a feel-out meeting intended to help him better understand Russia's and Vladimir Putin's position, and he also suggested that any potential settlement in Ukraine could involve territorial exchanges, and also this has dismissed Ukrainian reservations about such swaps. It is important to recall that Ukraine is not taking part in this conversation, in this meeting, which is a geopolitical symbolism that takes place also in this meeting between President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and also U.S. President Donald Trump. Neither Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky nor leaders from Western European nations have been invited to these talks. Also, the summit was organized in short order after a visit by Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff to Moscow last week, and President Trump had also long promised to mediate in this conflict and has increasingly expressed also discontent with the pace of Russian-Ukrainian talks as well. According to U.S. President Donald Trump, he assured in a conference that he hoped the talks would pave the way for a subsequent meeting between Putin and Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky. A hypothetical second meeting would be extremely important, he said, as it would likely be central to talks about making a peace deal involving land swaps, according to Trump. Earlier this week, Trump also hinted that any potential solution to the Ukraine conflict would involve territorial exchanges, and also there will be some land swapping according to his very own statements. Moscow previously indicated that also it had received an acceptable offer from Washington through the U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff during his talks with President Vladimir Putin last week. And also Witkoff's visit was productive according to Russia and also laid the groundwork for the Alaska summit. This was mentioned precisely by the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov on Thursday ahead of this very important and very key meeting. This was qualified as very important by both leaders involved in this meeting, President Putin, President Trump. And let's recall that it is also taking place in a context in which Donald Trump is having erratic behaviors towards also another key of geopolitical topics. For example, it is also targeting the Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro, and it is taking place, this meeting, in a complex geopolitical scenario in that matter as well. According to several news agencies, this meeting between presidents of Russia and President of the United States, Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump, is not going to take place in the format 1 by 1, but in the format 3 by 3, in which several ministers are going to take part. And this was informed a few minutes ago by the Speaker of the White House, Caroline Leavitt. Also, during a lunch that is going to be taking place in a wider composition, there will be also present the Finance and Commerce Secretaries of the United States, Scott Bessent, and also Howard Lutnick, and also the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and also the Chief of Cabinet of the White House, Susie Wiles. Now we are live. We are seeing live images coming from Alaska. We are seeing now President Vladimir Putin is going down the stairs of the presidential airplane of Russia. He is being awaited by officials of the United States, and it is going to be marking the start of the meeting that is going to be taking place today between President Donald Trump and President Putin. Let's recall that President Donald Trump has already arrived a few minutes ago at the airport. They are going to be meeting right now. At this moment, we are seeing President Donald Trump is on his way to meet President Vladimir Putin at this hour. This is going to be a historical greeting that is going to mark the start, the beginning of this process that hopefully could set a way for peace to be achieved in the region, and also in accordance with the interest of the Russian people and its sovereignty as well, for specifically Ukraine stop being a threat for the sovereignty of Russia at this moment. So we are awaiting at this moment for this greeting to take place between President Vladimir Putin and President Donald Trump, who are at this moment said to be shaking hands at this moment in Alaska, the United States. We are seeing at this moment President Donald Trump, President Putin just met. They are shaking hands at this moment. They are sharing a few words. They are going to be also accompanied by interpreters as well that are going to be forming and leading this negotiation, this meeting, this conversation, this dialogue, this bilateral dialogue, in which it is important to recall that Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky is not invited, has not been invited to this conversation that is promising to be important, that is promising to pave the way for a definite conclusion, for a definite solution to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine at this moment. Both leaders are at this moment at the Anchorage airport, Alaska 2025. We can see a podium where both leaders are also now taking pictures, and also in a moment that is going to set and it's going to start this moment, the historical moment that is potentially going to have very positive impact in